Everyone, my name is Frank Weibel. For my research project, I did the Battle of Saratoga. My argument is that the Battle of Saratoga is one of, if not the most important battle in the American Revolution and in American history in general, but is often forgotten about or just overlooked in general. Um, in my paper, going to explain how I believe that there is Hall of Fame level battles to. I'm a big sports fan, so I try to tie certain things together. But Hall of Fame level battles like D-Day or Gettysburg or the Battle of Yorktown in the same war as Saratoga, where even those who aren't historians know the battles, kind of understand the gist of them and what happened and what they caused. However, in most cases, when you pick a select few to be the most important, there will be others that are left out and behind. And in my opinion, the Battle of Saratoga is the glowing example of one that was just kind of left behind. The Battle of Saratoga was a battle in northern New York, fall 1777, where the Americans cut off John Burgoyne going south towards or through New York. The idea was he would meet up with two other British armies and they would just kind of three-prong attack their way through New York, through Pennsylvania, and continue to go south, essentially choking the Americans from the south and the north. However, Horatio Gates found out about this, moved up to Saratoga, and found that Burgoyne, who was waiting for these two armies to arrive, well, they never arrived, and eventually figured out, as Gates was setting up a defensive position, that he had to attack Gates's defenses before he was just further entrenched and couldn't get out. The problem was the British attacked expecting reinforcements coming from the south any day now. Gates, however, knew these reinforcements were not coming and continued to attack. There was two battles at Saratoga. The first one, the British won, kind of. It was a closely contested battle in which Burgoyne sent his reinforcements in, but Gates's defenses held, and the British had to regroup and retool. The problem was they had no supplies. They didn't have anybody coming, but the Americans did. And eventually, a few weeks later, the Americans launched a secondary assault to eventually encircle the British and force them to surrender. This was huge because while this battle happened in September of 1777, if you were to go back and look at the battles in the Revolutionary War, you will see there are just a myriad of losses that just piled up for the Americans time after time after time. So morale was quite low, and it was becoming ever apparent that Americans didn't really think at this point that they could beat the British. They could believe that their cause was just, but at the end of the day, if one is just too much better than another, or if the British are just that much better in war than they are, then they have no shot. The other issue was the Americans at the time were trying to win over the aid of the French, and the French looked at it in the aspect of they had just gotten out of a war with Britain again in the colonies, and they felt that if they were going to go into another one, it better be a worthwhile war, it better be worth their while. And if the Americans weren't showing anything, then it's essentially the French facing the British in what's essentially British controlled territory without much help from the Americans. After the Battle of Saratoga, the French saw that the Americans were capable of beating the British on their own. So if they're able to not only beat them but humiliate them pretty well, it was a pretty one-sided and decisive victory, then they must have something going for them that they could back. It also traveled through the ranks quickly through the American military of why, or of how they beat them, and that the British were beatable. And then later in my paper, I go on to explain, reasoning of why this battle, which was so key for America to begin, just wasn't really seen as that important. My big reasoning for it is just wars took forever at that point, and it's hard on the eye test to sell a battle that happened 2 years into the war and 6 years before the war ended as the key turning point in the battle. But thank you.